What's up, fighting fans? Tibz from the Fight IQ channel. Today we're coming back for another episode of the Fight IQ show. Today it's gonna be a review of the UFC Vegas 100 UFC Fight Night. It took place Saturday, November 9th, and I have a few things to say about it. Today I'm alone, Min is not here, so I'm gonna try to do what we usually do together and do it alone. I'm gonna start saying what I liked about the UFC Vegas 100, then I'll mention what I'm less enthusiastic about, and finally I will give some performance bonuses. So let's get ready to rumble! So, let's start with the good points of the UFC Vegas 100. First of all, we got a lot of finishes in that card. I think we got only 2 decisions if I'm not mistaken, and I was wrong. We got 3 decisions, Guilherme Robertson versus Luana Pinheiro. We got Dennis Gomez versus Kowalkiewicz, and Bolaños versus Romius. About the finishes, I think they were quite entertaining. Let's go fight by fight. So the first one was Melissa Mullins versus Claudia Sigula. So first of all, Sigula was a late replacement, a short notice. Mullins should have fought Montserrat Rendon, but Rendon has to withdraw. And the first round was quite competitive, to be honest. I think Mullins was a bit in deep water at the beginning. Sigula was pressuring her with the striking, but as soon as it got into the clinch, then you could see what was Mullins' strength. Takedown, then dominating on the ground for the rest of the first round. And when we got to the second round, then complete domination from Mullins. Maybe also the short notice preparation showing a bit for Sigula. She was not ready to face that kind of opposition, I think. And let's not forget that Mullins was overweight. She was 2 pounds over the weight limit. But still, great finish in ground and pound. Back in the win column for Mullins after losing to Nora Cornell her last time. But I'd like to see Sigula back in the octagon with a full preparation. Then we got Trish and Gore coming back after long absence. This I really liked. Gore's life hasn't been easy since he came into the UFC. He looked great in the Ultimate Fighter, but then he lost versus Brian Battle in the final, and since then he's been struggling a little bit. He had 2 other fights in 2022, a loss versus Cody Brundage, and then a nasty guillotine win against Josh Fremd. But since then we hadn't seen him fight. A lot of injuries, but now he seems back in great shape. But still it's hard to judge because he finished the fight so quick. 1 minute and 23 seconds. Powerful standing guillotine that Antonio Trocoli could not defend. Emotional post-fight speech, but I really liked what I saw from Gore, and of course I'd like to see him come back as soon as possible. Then a fight I was expecting a lot, Blackshear versus Stamen. 2 tough bantamweights. They got some losses on their records, but always against tough opposition, so my expectations were quite high. And it didn't disappoint. I really liked what I saw from both fighters, taking their time first, sizing up their opponents, but Blackshear had the advantage with his speed. His striking was crisp. I love the flying knees, and he showed that he had a lot of power as well. As soon as he rocked Stamen, he was looking for the finish, was first trying a guillotine on the ground. Stamen defended that really well, but as soon as he gave his back, Blackshear took it, and it didn't take long for him to finish with a rear naked choke. So Stamen is now on 3 losses in a row, but still I think he has a lot to bring to that division, so I'd like to see him again. But Blackshear, I mean, great performance from him. I think one of his best inside the octagon. In my opinion, he's not that far off being ranked in the top 15. So let's see if he can get a quick turnaround and keep gaining momentum. Then another quick finish, 51 seconds. Good referee stoppage in my opinion. Chuck Buffalo versus Semmelsberger. I think a good stoppage from the referee. Was not a clean knockout, but you could see that Semmelsberger was not there anymore. Great display of speed and power from Radke. Bouncing back after his loss to Carlos Prates. I'm a bit less fan of the attitude in the post-fight speech, but I'll come back later on that. Then Eliseu Zaleski versus Zach Scroggin. I mean, I'm not surprised. Zaleski is a tough opponent. He fought some of the best at welterweight. He was supposed to face Nicolas Dalby, but the fight fell through. Shout out to Scroggin for jumping in. He was 7-0 before that fight, but of course he never fought that kind of opposition before. I think it was a bit harsh to make him face Zaleski, who finished him under 90 seconds in the first round. Super powerful as usual. Not a lot to say actually about this fight. Let's just hope that Scroggin will be rewarded for the risk he took, and that Zaleski will face Dalby next time. The main event of the prelims was Gomez vs Kowalkiewicz. Nice fight, I think. It went to the decision, but not boring at all. Denise Gomez did a lot of hard work. She had a huge size disadvantage, but she compensated with her speed and her power, and also by setting up a lot of pressure. And Kowalkiewicz is still a worthy opponent. I think it's a mandatory step before facing somebody from the top 15. And by winning in that fashion, I think Gomez proved that she now deserves an opportunity at being ranked. The main card was quite good, to be honest. I had a lot of expectation about Mansour Abdul Malik. He really impressed me in the Contender Series, and he was now making his UFC debut 3 months later, and I think Abdul Malik proved that he has the strength and the power to compete in that division. He completely overwhelmed Todorovic, great takedowns, great ground and pound. Todorovic was trying a lot off his back, but he was being constantly hit by Abdul Malik, and it took him less than 3 minutes to finish his opponent. I love the nasty knee to the face in the clinch. I think it was great from Abdul Malik to recognize that, and then he finished him with ground and pound. So he's now 7-0, still undefeated, training with a lot of good guys at Team Extreme Couture. I'm sure he has a lot of potential. Let's see who he will face next time and what he will look like if he passed the first round, because he uses a lot of energy, and I'm quite curious to see if he gasses out. Then we got the 2 other decision fights, Robertson vs Pinheiro, a top 15 strawweight fight. To be honest, I liked it. Was not a great fight, but a good fight. Robertson has quite a revival in her career. She is now on a 3-fight win streak, quite impressive, and she was really committed to a game plan versus Pinheiro. Pinheiro is a great striker, but she didn't have a lot of opportunity to display it because of Robertson's wrestling and grappling. Logical unanimous decision, and I think Robertson should face a top 10 opponent next. Bolaños vs Romius, one of the best fights on that card in my opinion. I really liked it. Competitive fight, a striker versus a grappler, and this time the striker won. Crazy first round, a lot of intensity from Romius, was trying to get that fight to the ground, and we saw how strong he is with his takedowns. But on the feet, Bolaños was keeping him away with his great body kicks, completely dominating in the striking department, and a lot of good choices while defending the wrestling and grappling from Romius. I think his experience and his fight IQ was a big advantage in that fight. Romius seemed more powerful, but he kept making bad choices, which Bolaños recognized and took advantage of. Logical win in my opinion, can't wait to see Bolaños again. Also curious to see what Romius will do next time. He is young, it was his first UFC fight, he just came out of the Contender Series, so I'd like to give him another chance. And then we got the co-main and the main event. The co-main was also a fight I was expecting. Rainier de Ridder, former One Championship champion, one of the best grappler in MMA, finally making his UFC debut against another talented grappler with more than 50 UFC fights, Gerald Meerschaert. I liked what I saw, to be honest, but there are also some negative points that I will highlight later on. But for the positive, the Ridder seemed in great shape. They went 3 rounds. He showed that he was better in the grappling department, and against somebody like Meerschaert, I think it says a lot. Also, even though he was not really confident with his striking, he still showed he was dangerous and has a lot of power. He dropped Meerschaert at the end of the round 1 with a nasty elbow to the face, followed by a direct, and after multiple tries to submit Meerschaert, he succeeded in the 3rd round with a beautiful arm triangle choke. Also liked his post-fight speech, asking for a quick turnaround and to fight in New York for the UFC 309. That's quite crazy if he does it. I'm not sure it will happen, but it says a lot about his will to fight. I also liked his comment in the press conference after the fight. He seemed really happy, really grateful to the UFC, and he wants to keep gaining momentum. I think it could be good for European MMA to have such a figure in the top 15 of the middleweight division. Also something I liked, he discussed a bit how he left One Championship. I'm usually not a fan of people criticizing after leaving, but I think his comment is confirming what a lot of fighters are saying, that One Championship is not treating their fighters so good, especially after a couple of years, they are not giving them fights. So again, I think it was important to be addressed, and thank you the Ridder for your transparency. And finally, the main event, Neil Magny vs Carlos Prates. Again, not a lot to say about it, great finish from Prates. He knocked Neil Magny out cold, a bit harsh to see that. Magny is not a guy that you can finish so easily. He was still in the top 15 for a reason, but Prates has the potential to be a real star. It was his 4th fight in the UFC, 4 knockouts of the night. I mean, the guy has some real potential. His callouts were great, even though I think De La Maddalena is out of his reach. But why not fighting Geoff Neal? I really like his energy. I just hope UFC won't burn him. He fought 4 times in 1 year. I think it's too much. But yeah, the guy proved he could do it, and his striking is lethal. I think that was it about the good points of the UFC Vegas 100. Now let's give some boos. About the lows of the UFC Vegas 100, first of all, I think it was an important date. It was the UFC Vegas 100, and to me the card was not reflecting that. Of course, we should have had more exciting matchups. Some of the fighters withdrew, that's not UFC's fault, but still the level of this card, I think the matchmakers didn't do their best. Some of the matchups didn't make sense in my opinion. I think Zaleski vs Scroggin is a perfect example. Scroggin had nothing to do fighting Zaleski. Even though I respect the fighting spirit, Zaleski is levels above Scroggin. More powerful, more experienced. Thankfully the referee stopped in time, but it could have turned badly for Scroggin. So of course I hope to see him again, like I mentioned earlier, but I think it was a mistake from the matchmakers to put them two together. Same thing with Radke and Semmelsberger. Let me take my tablet and my cheat code topology. I mean, Radke, he faced Urbina, who he knocked out, and Prates earlier this year. And Semmelsberger was on a 3-fight losing streak against Jeremiah Wells, Uros Medic, and Preston Parsons. So to me, that didn't make a lot of sense. Except if you want to promote Radke, who seems to have an easy personality to market, but Chuck Buffalo should face some tougher opposition next time. While we are on this fight, I'd like to address the post-fight speech. I understand it was emotional. I mean, those training camps, they are really hard on the fighters. It's a lot of privation. You miss time with your family and loved ones. You have to cut a lot of weight, train really hard. So emotions can be strong after a fight like this. But I didn't like how he talked about his opponents, about the rest of the category. I think it was not really classy from his part. Still, I enjoy watching him fight, and I think he has the potential to be a top 15 welterweight. Something else I didn't like, Cortavius Romeus. I mean, I like the guy, I like the potential, but he keeps doing bad choices. He was already warned in the Dana White Contender Series by Dana White himself, and he did a bit the same thing against Bolaños. First of all, he rocked him hard at the end of the first round, and for whatever reason, he tried to submit him. I mean, finish him with ground and pound, or at least try. But trying to take his back and then his neck with less than 10 seconds, to me it was nonsense. I also think he should have trusted his striking a bit more. Of course, Bolaños is an elite striker, his kicking game was on point, so it was hard for Romeus to get close. In my opinion, he should have used his striking more in combination with his wrestling. More ground and pound. He lost too many positions after a good takedown just because he was trying a submission or something. If he wants to succeed at the UFC, he has to fight a little bit smarter than this. But still, he's young, he definitely has potential, so let's see what's next for him. Also, I'll say it again, I hate the Apex atmosphere. You don't feel anything from the crowd, it's really small, it feels like it's COVID all over again. I know it's easier for the UFC, they own the Apex, it's convenient, it's in Vegas, but I'd like to see them going to different destinations. They can definitely make those arenas full, and it'd definitely be nicer for the fighters to fight in front of a full crowd. I think I mentioned all the bad points of the UFC fight night. The wrong matchmaking, the crowd, Radke's speech, Romeus' fight IQ, the level of opposition. Yeah, I think that was it. I forgot. Of course there was something else in the negative points. The Reader. I love to see him in the UFC. I think he can really bring something in that division. And let's not forget, he didn't fight as a middleweight for quite a long time, because middleweight at one championship is light heavyweight in the UFC. So that was already a good thing to see that he can perform at 185 pounds and be in good shape. What I wanted to highlight as a negative point was that there are some holes in his defense, and I mean by that the striking defense. He was in a lot of troubles against Merchant at some points, and Merchant is a grappler. There are some nasty strikers at middleweight, especially in the top 15, so the Reader will have to make some adjustments there. That was the only negative point I had to say about the Reader. So now if you guys ready, let's give some performance bonuses. Let's go for the performance bonuses. Let's start with the KO of the night. I was actually hesitating a lot. Of course there is the Prates knockout, his 4th in a row against Neil Magny, a legend, but there was also one that impressed me a lot, and it was Mansour Abdul Malik. Even if it's not a cold knockout, I'm gonna give him the KO of the night because of the huge power display he did. Crazy power, I'm still seeing that knee to the face in my mind and that relentless ground and pound. I'm definitely gonna follow him closely because that kind of power is special. For the submission of the night, here also I was hesitating. I think Blackshear showed a lot of skills with his rear naked choke and in his ground game in general, transitioning from different positions until he got the finish. But I have to say, the arm triangle choke from the leader is something else. First of all, he did it against another elite grappler, and this one was flawless. There was no way Merchant was getting out of it. The execution was perfect, and it was the 13th submission win for the leader. I think it deserved that bonus. And fight of the night. For this one, I didn't hesitate. To me, it's Bolaños versus Romius. One of the most competitive fights on the card. Great action from both sides. Really close. Great IQ displayed by Bolaños. And we saw all the compartments of MMA represented. Striking, wrestling, grappling. I loved it. So to me, no hesitation. Bolaños versus Romius. You guys did great. If I had to give a rating for this event, out of 10 like we usually do with Mean, I would say this one is around 4 out of 10 for this event. A lot of finishes, entertaining for sure, but the matchups were not so great. Not a lot of big names, not a lot of ranked athletes. So yeah, I'm a bit harsh, but 4 out of 10 for me. That was it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the review. I know it's less fun when I do it alone, but soon Min will come back and we'll form that dynamic duo once again. Punch those like and subscribe buttons, you know it helps us a lot. In the comments, I'd like to see what you thought about the review, what you thought about the event itself, what will be your performance bonuses. Join us on Discord, on Telegram, on Instagram, whatever you're on. We see each other again soon. Enjoy the fights!